Welcome to the Astrology Star Sisters. Today, my star sister is Madam Simon joining me, and we're talking about Uranus stations direct in Taurus. Welcome, Simon. How are you today?
Better now that I'm here with you.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you on again. So we're going to get to Uranus stations direct. I can feel it already, the stationing happening, even though it doesn't happen until tomorrow.
Yeah.
So to get a hold of Madam Simon, her website is iconalchemy.com, and my website is alightpath.com, and we always enjoy hearing from you. So today we're talking about Uranus stationing direct. And Uranus stationed retrograde back in September on the 1st of 2024 at 27 degrees of Taurus. And tomorrow Uranus is stationing direct on January 30th, 2025 at 23 degrees of Taurus. So it's been retrograde about 5 months. So you want to tell us a little bit about Uranus, please?
Oh, okay. So Uranus, or Uranos, the Greek god of the sky. This is the only planet not named after a Roman god. And Uranus was actually the first of the outer planets that was discovered, and that gave us a sense that there was more out there than the 7 traditional planets. So it was something that really disrupted the status quo, which is very on brand for this planet. Has an orbit of about 84 years, spends about 7 years in a sign. So, I'm a traditional old stick in the mud, so I don't really look at it as the modern ruler of Aquarius, but a lot of astrologers do. And I do think that it does have an affinity with the sign. So I don't think modern astrologers are totally off base there. Uranus is an ice giant, has 13 rings, and spins sideways. So we can already see it literally is looking like a rebel, not just signifying rebellion. And it is a significator of sudden change. It is indicates creativity, freedom, eccentricity, originality, independence. It's innovative. It's revolutionary. We see what is unexpected, what is liberating. There's breakdown and breakthrough, and you get sudden flashes of insight with Uranus. But it can be very disruptive and extreme. And there can be this kind of restlessness associated with it. Sometimes, interestingly enough, we'll get this kind of sense of boredom when we're looking at Uranus transits, because Uranus is asking us for, something more and new and exciting. And if there's not anything more and new and exciting, then the boredom starts to be more oppressive. There can be not just detachment, but dissociation. We will see with Uranus. Sometimes Uranus can be a trauma signature in the natal chart. It's unpredictable. It's restless. And sometimes it's just plain weird. And full disclosure, I have Uranus at my ascendant. So I am very Uranian.
So you embody Uranus energy totally. That's great. Okay, we're going to talk a little bit about Taurus because Uranus is in the sign of Taurus. Taurus is a fixed sign. Fixed energy stays on the path. It's sustaining and stands firm. Gets the job done. The ruling planet is Venus. It's an earth sign, so it's grounded, and Taurus likes flowers. The mantra for Taurus is I have, and some key words are materialistic, determined, practical, a manifester, a builder, slow moving, dependable, patient, supportive, and about wealth. And some cautions are overly stubborn, dislikes change, and can be overly materialistic. Would you like to add anything, Simon?
Taurus likes creature comforts. Taurus likes not just to have our survival needs met, but to have them met well, to have good food shared in a good place with good people. So anytime that, for example, when the moon is in Taurus, we all tend to want to have our snacks and get real cozy and enjoy our material comforts.
Thank you for adding that. So we're going to just take a quick look at the chart where Uranus stationed retrograde on September 1st of 2024. And this is a chart for Seattle, Washington. And Uranus was in the 9th house, and it's circled there for those that are watching and for information. And then here's the aspects that were taking place on that retrograde. Do you want to say anything about these aspects that were happening when Uranus stationed retrograde, Simon?
Well, we can see that Uranus was part of a minor grand trine that actually was going on for much of the autumn between Pluto and Neptune and Uranus. So we had all three of the outer planets in this supportive aspect to each other, and forming then the head of this kite with Lilith at the tail, Black Moon Lilith, and Venus was just separating from the conjunction with Lilith at that point, in the sign that Venus rules. And remember, Uranus was in Taurus, which is also Venus ruled. So there was quite this Venus emphasis, but we can see that Venus was applying to this conjunction with the South Node, which was in Libra then. And so there was this weird combination of this emphasis on Venusian topics, while at the same time, a certain amount of dissolution and letting go and releasing and sometimes, almost discarding, shall we say, Venusian grace and kindness and fairness. Okay. And if you think back to what was going on in the beginning of September, there was a lot of this kind of tension building up, and people being kind of cranky, which is in keeping with, that kind of not caring so much about whether or not things were nice and gracious. Okay. We also saw that Uranus was, at the time of the station retrograde, was squaring the moon and Mercury in Leo. And, a Leo moon Mercury combination is going to be vocal in its expression, and maybe a bit loud, and maybe a bit of a force of nature. And especially squaring off against Uranus, then there's going to be, this perhaps not so well-mannered communication going on. Very much this, listen to me. I want you to hear what I have to say, but not being necessarily very kind or gracious about it, which is quite in line with what was going on for the United States in particular during the election season. We also see that Uranus was opposing Pallas in Scorpio. And so Pallas in Scorpio Pallas has to do with our wisdom, our strategic thinking, our ability to be tactical, sometimes, delay gratification in order to meet our ends. And in Scorpio, there can be a certain amount of ruthlessness, or even deviousness to planning. There is that, getting things done by hook or by crook, by any means necessary. And at the same time, potentially playing things close to the chest. So it's interesting because here we see this, especially here in Seattle, with the moon and Mercury up in the 11th house, a very social place, right? But then down in the 3rd house, which is kind of like more your local neighborhood and your, some of those who are close to you, there's this keeping things quiet while there's all this very public loudness going on, and emotional loudness going on.
Well, I would say that at the time that Uranus stationed retrograde, Uranus was very interactive with the other planets, since there's so many aspects to so many planets. That big conjunction there in Libra, that holds quite a few points in the sky, and there's a lot of action that was happening. Anything else you want to say about the Uranus retrograde chart?
Well, you will also note that Mars was squaring Neptune at the time. You can see Mars right up there at the top of the chart. Mars in Gemini, again, that's emphasizing a lot of talk, and not necessarily pleasant talk. And with the square to Neptune, there's that confused communication, there's misinformation, and potential frustrations, and a difficulty with being compassionate or kind to each other. Okay. And I do want to kind of actually revisit the fact that, again, all 3 outers are in that minor grand trine. So it's not just, there's some kind of, personal crankiness or local disruption going on. It's whatever these personal things are, they're feeding into this larger pattern with all of these outer planets that are affecting us on a worldwide level and on a generational level. Okay. And all 3 of these outer planets are shifting signs. As I have talked about before, they're shifting signs from yin signs to yang signs. And we had Pluto was the first to station direct and enter a new sign, that of Aquarius. Neptune has stationed direct and is now heading toward Aries. It's going to be entering Aries this spring. And then Uranus will be the last of the outers to change signs and will be entering Gemini this summer. So we're getting this massive, massive shift. And now this Uranus stationing direct is kind of the last it's that last of the outers to make that change in motion. And so it's really getting the changes, the big changes of this year, finally heading forward.
That was great. Okay, so now we're going to look at the chart for Uranus stationing direct on January 30th. And this chart is also for Seattle, and Uranus in this chart is in the 3rd house. And we're going to look at the aspects that Uranus is making. Go ahead and jump in.
Oh boy. Okay. So Uranus this time is opposing Juno. We saw previously Uranus was opposing Pallas at the station retrograde. And now Uranus is opposing Juno. Juno relates to the agreements that we make that uphold our kind of our institutionalized relationships. So we can see that with marriages, we can see that with business partnerships. But also, I tend to think of Juno as relating to the social contract. Okay. So there is this, with Uranus and Juno opposing each other. They're both looking at each other and saying, okay, Juno says, there are rules and we need to maintain some ability to compromise with each other in order to be able to continue to have the connections and have the social order and have the society that we want. And Uranus is like, oh, yeah. Uranus is perfectly willing to kick over the hornet's nest. And I find this interesting because we've had Uranus retrograde for all this time, while there have been some big changes kind of coming down the pike. And all retrogrades involve that kind of reevaluation, right? Reassessing, revisiting. But when the planet goes direct, like, okay, everything that we learned during that reevaluation time, now we're getting ready to act on it. Okay. And so change is inevitable. Change is the one true constant of the universe. But Uranus is like, oh, no, we got to have big change. We got to have change that we might not previously have considered. We have to be willing to rock the boat in a big way. And so this challenge between these two, I find very interesting. Note also that at the time of the station direct, the moon is squaring Uranus and squaring Juno. And
Ceres.
the moon...
The moon is conjunct Ceres.
Is conjoining Ceres, yes, but squaring Juno.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's interesting because, the moon can definitely relate to the body. In mundane astrology, relates to the will of the people. Conjoining Ceres doubles down on what are the needs of the body. Okay. But it's in Aquarius, which is an air sign and is therefore kind of heady, very mental. Okay. And so now this is what not just feeds our bodies, but what feeds our minds. Okay.
And it's interesting that when Uranus was stationing retrograde, the moon was also square Uranus too. And so then when it goes direct, the moon is square again to that Uranus.
Right. And so I very much feel like this is challenging us to recognize where we've kind of, maybe been a bit mulish about changes that needed to be made. Maybe we've, put our heels in the mud and not been willing to get moving forward. But remember, I said change is inevitable. The change is going to come whether we like it or not. How we navigate that change is going to depend largely upon our own mindsets about it. So there we see that Aquarian influence. What are our beliefs about it? And to what extent are we willing to recognize that it's not just a matter of what are our personal needs. It's, a rising tide lifts all ships, right? There is this need for us to gather together and support each other to face the changes that are coming, whether we like them or not. And we can certainly look at that simply from the standpoint of things like climate change, okay, or economic changes. Yeah, both of those have to do with the condition of the earth and with material things governed by Taurus. And so Uranus and Taurus has been disrupting things on that level. When Uranus entered Taurus, Kilauea erupted. Okay. And I was like, yep, that is very on brand. Okay. The supply chain disruptions that we experienced in connection with the pandemic, very Uranus in Taurus. Okay. And so seeing Uranus stationing direct and getting ready for more big changes, we need to recognize that those changes are going to happen in areas where we traditionally don't like change, right? Taurus can be really stubborn. Fixed signs in general can be really stubborn, and they don't want to have to change. And I mean, who wants to have, say the financial rug pulled out from under you, okay? Or to have to do very different things when it comes to your material resources. But for the good of the planet, we're going to have to make big changes. And for the good of ourselves as individuals within the larger group, we're going to have to find a way to navigate change, while at the same time, with that moon in Ceres in Aquarius, we need to remember not to leave others behind, not to forget about the the material needs and the well-being of those who are potentially more easily harmed by these kinds of things. Who are the people who are in the paths of the hurricane or the wildfire? It is notable that LA, in the wake of the LA wildfires, the people have banded together in amazing ways, done so much to make sure that their neighbors are fed and clothed and have some kind of shelter over their head during a disaster period. And as awful as that time has been for them, seeing people do so many good things for each other in the wake of that has been incredibly heartening and has showed us the best of humanity. So
it can be done.
It can be done. And I'm inclined to see this as like, yes, this is this stimulation asking us to take care of each other. And we see also, in addition to that big old T-square here in this chart, we also see this grand trine that's going on with Uranus is trine Pallas, where Uranus was previously opposite Pallas. Okay, so now there's that capacity for planning. There's a capacity for strategic thinking, for wisdom, okay, for learning from our mistakes. And then there is this trine with the South Node that has recently entered into Virgo. And the South Node in Virgo suggests that we need to let go of perfectionism. We need to recognize that some details, some things are going to fall by the wayside. Okay. We are likely to have to compromise, again, going back to that Juno opposition with Uranus. We may have to compromise on certain things. And, things are probably not going to be as perfect as we would like. But in the process of letting go of some of that need for perfect, we can perhaps make changes that will be good. Also, you will note the sextile with Uranus, or between Uranus and Mars. Note that Mars rules Scorpio, where Juno is. So that Mars is at the point of Thales to that opposition. Mars retrograde, but our kind of more internalized emotional action that we see with Mars retrograde in Cancer is now the mediator between the changes that must happen and our dedication to still upholding certain principles, certain responsibilities, and certain standards, shall we say, for our social interactions and connections.
Well, and I would say that with Pallas and that grand trine with Uranus and the South Node, that, you know, making new plans and coming up with new strategy, but there's possibility that you also need a plan B and C too, or to make adjustments as those come along, because it's not, you don't just make one plan and that's going to stick. I think it'll have to be adjusted from time to time.
Absolutely. Yeah. I very much feel like we can't be married to any one plan here. We have to come up with contingency plans and be ready to shift on a dime if needed be to deal with the changes that are going on.
And then Mars in that sextile to Uranus, when Uranus stationed retrograde, it was in a square. So now it's, you know, communicating with Uranus now. The Mars and Uranus are communicating on some level. Okay, here's another aspect that's not included with Uranus. It's a T-square. Do you want to speak to that?
Oh, so Mars reapplying to the square with Chiron is rough. You know, Chiron is in a Mars-ruled sign of Aries. Chiron has been in Aries and has been really reminding us that we can't always just kind of muscle our way through things. When we see Chiron and Aries, there are questions about our executive function, our ability to get things done, our ability to do things heroically, our ability to be independent. Okay, all of those are things that can show up with Chiron and Aries. And the US is experiencing its Chiron return with Chiron and Aries. And so I think for a lot of people in the United States in particular, but also for anybody who has this placement, you know, that would be a lot of people within my generation. Okay. Now it is there's potential shame over what we can't accomplish. Okay. And unfortunately, a lot of times when we feel hurt or ashamed or like we're not up to snuff on something, then we can overcompensate. And so there can be this you know, increased aggression or bravado or, you know, oh, yes, you know, I can get this done. Never mind what it's going to do to my body and spirit. And so we can see burnout, and we have seen a lot of burnout for a lot of people who are just exhausted. You know, with all the things that have been going on in our society, with all the things that have been going on in the world at large. And so all of that is getting re-emphasized now. At the same time, Mars is opposing Pallas. And so, you know, again, Pallas deals with our wisdom and our strategic thinking, our ability to plan. And Pallas in Capricorn in particular is concerned with long-term planning, long-term strategy. Okay. But Mars is notoriously impatient. This is Mars, however, retrograde and in the sign of Cancer. And so this is a Mars that isn't going to be as overtly aggressive as Mars sometimes can be. Instead, this is a Mars that is concerned with protecting what's close to home, is concerned with acting based on our feelings, okay? And can sometimes be a little passive aggressive, because it's, it's being self-protective. It's keeping things close to the chest. But, don't get between a Mars in Cancer and their family or, loved ones. Okay. There is this fierceness that can show up there, even though this is a placement that is not normally known for being very aggressive. Okay. And again, think about that in context of the potential for overcompensating that I mentioned with that Chiron in Aries, that Chiron in Mars ruled Aries. And so I really feel like this T-square is about making some adjustments in our plans, in our long-term goals, and also how are we acting on those based on how we feel, and getting feedback from our feelings about what seems right or isn't right for us in terms of our actions, not just now, but over the long term. And are we taking into account, we're only human. We only have so much to give. Okay. Willpower, yes, you can do things to strengthen your willpower, but it's a finite resource. Okay. You cannot just use willpower to push your way through everything. Okay. Take it from somebody who often is known to do that kind of thing. There are consequences. Okay. And so now is a time for us to recognize we are in a marathon, not a sprint, especially when it comes to the big world changes, the big societal changes that are going on all around us. And yes, we can get kind of, maybe a little defensive and a little bit like, oh yeah, I want to make sure I take care of what's mine. And that's all well and good, but we can't be in this space of reactivity if we want to be able to go the distance. Right?
Yes, absolutely. And that Pallas making the plans and trying to come up with something. Chiron there is also a teacher, so there could be some people that could teach us things or to help us heal our wounds, and not let it be such a deep emotional wound, and try to work through it a little bit at a time.
Having a certain amount of camaraderie with and sympathy with other people who are going through the same stuff that you are is a huge part of how to deal with chironic wounds. Chironic wounds are not meant to be, something that you just kind of tough it out alone. The best way to be able to deal with those issues is to find other people who are experiencing similar things. And even if you can't heal your own wound, you may be able to give them information that will help them to get a leg up. And in return, that helps you. So
I would agree with that. Let's see. Oh, we have a mystic rectangle here. Go ahead and start.
Okay. So we were just talking about Mars and Uranus and Juno earlier. Okay, so we've got all of them there, and we've got Pallas involved as well. There's a sextile going on between Pallas and Juno. There's a sextile going on between Mars and Uranus. And then there's this trine going on with the Uranus, Pallas, and Pluto as well there. Although, I mean, it's a very wide cross sign conjunction, but that Pluto is still definitely flavoring this. And then, Mars and Juno are trine. And so we've got these oppositions here. Yes, there's that tension there, but there's also the support of those trines and sextiles. The mystic rectangle is this great combination of sort of these challenges and stimulation, things to kind of get us off our butts and get us moving and get us thinking about things in ways that we wouldn't if we, just got to sit there and be comfortable all the time. Okay. But at the same time, it's not as harsh as it would be if it was just those hard aspects. So it's a lovely combination that is supportive to us while at the same time stimulating movement and growth.
Yes, work through the change, put in the hard work, and then the reward or the gift comes afterwards.
Or can come along the way in some cases. I mean, looking at things from that standpoint of what do you gain from the journey? It's not just the destination. It's what's going on with the process. You know that I'm an artist, and a huge part of what makes art is not just, a painting on the wall or a sculpture. It's the process that the artist went through in order to arrive at that painting or that sculpture or a dance performance or what have you.
Exactly. Okay, and then we have a few more aspects here. We have a talent trine or a minor grand trine, and then a trine from Jupiter to the sun. And because Saturn's getting pretty close to that, because it's Uranus, sextile Mars, and sextile Neptune, basically, or Saturn, and then it's that trine between Saturn and Mars. I don't know why I made that circle so big, but I guess because they're all housemates there in Pisces.
Well, we're getting prepared for that big old Pisces pileup that is going to be happening all through, late February and on into March. It's going to be going back and forth between Pisces and Aries, this big shift from water to fire. And, that much watery stuff going on, that much Pisces energy going on all at once. It feels big. It should be noted that this weekend we've got the moon in Pisces as well. So, it's really interesting actually to see that coming on the heels of this Uranus station direct. Like we have this big signature of change, and then this powerful, watery, spiritual, connective, loving, but also, with some Saturnian sternness. But really, thinking of that Saturn influence, that is all about what is long term again. Just like we were talking about, the Pallas in Capricorn ruled by Saturn, that is concerned with long-term planning. So this kind of power of love and connection and, the willingness to see ourselves as all being part of one planet that's going through some stuff, but, has so much potential. If we can just hold that vision of a better future for all of us. Neptune at the tail end of Pisces, with Venus conjoining Neptune this weekend, and the North Node, that direction where our karmic arc is headed. Okay, this notion of what's in store for us, what we are fated for, what's our destiny. All of that is tied here to, well, what's our actions? And what are our feelings? How do we feel about it? And how are we going to act on our feelings in a way that has a long-term impact that is uniting rather than divisive? And then you combine that with this lovely Sun-Jupiter trine, which is, that's hopeful. It's it has faith. It believes in the possibility of a better day. It believes that we are up to the challenges ahead of us and that things will work out all right. So this is a really beautiful combination.
Right. And with that trine with the Sun and Jupiter, it's like, pay attention to your ideas, pay attention to what people are talking about, listen, and, also speak. And Jupiter's going to go direct in 5 days. So that's really interesting that it's trine that Sun just before it goes direct itself. So
yeah.
Any other last thoughts that you want to leave people with?
I would definitely say that this Uranus station and the weekend coming up right afterward, this is a great time to have heartfelt conversations, but also some fun conversations, with that Jupiter involvement there, to hold a bigger vision for what is possible. Neptune definitely stirs the imagination, and with the Venus conjunction there, it does so in a loving way. The Sun trine Jupiter in air signs can be expanding our thought, our perception, our discernment, our being able to see possibilities. Okay. And so all of these things in combination with Uranus, that great change maker, we now have a beautiful potential to get ourselves unstuck, for throughout Uranus's retrograde. Some of us may have been feeling like, okay, we really want change, but maybe we're afraid of it, or we're uncertain how to get things to go the way that we want them to. Well, now here we have Uranus heading forward again, stimulating that change, and there's all these other wonderful influences to help us imagine and follow through on that imagination to make something better, not just for ourselves individually, but for all the others who we are living on this earth with.
Well, and this is the day following the new moon and the Lunar New Year, so make sure you do a few intentions that Uranus might really help manifest those.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so I have a quote here. Be the change you wish to see in the world by Gandhi. Come back and enjoy more episodes with Astrology Star Sisters. And I want to take this time to thank everybody that's been joining us live and all those that come back and watch later. And here's Madam Simon's information slide, and I'll let her tell you about it.
Yes, so I can be found on Patreon as well as on my website, iconalchemy.com. On Patreon, I write about the ongoing astrological transits, and I also create custom astrological art for my patrons. I am a consulting astrologer, as Liz is. And so if you wish to schedule a consultation, you can visit me at iconalchemy.com. Or if you're here in the Pacific Northwest, I will be at the PNW Witches Market Imolc celebration this weekend, doing tarot and astrology readings live. So if you're one of those people who wants to have your reading in person, this is an opportunity to do that, and just come out and see all the fun art and hang out with the wonderful people there.
And then, as Simon said, I do consultations. I have a newsletter and a YouTube channel. I appreciate your subscriptions. And other podcasts that I do with Astrology Star Sister. There's a number of them: the Dwarf Planets, Planet Stationing, Decans Using Astrology and Tarot, Fixed Stars, Uranian Astrology, and Chinese Astrology. And then I'm doing the 2025 astrological highlights with the numerous astrologers. Then Astrological Magic's going to be a new show with Robert. And then monthly, Justin and I do the monthly astrology forecast, the full moon forecast, and a Chiron asteroid series. So there's lots for you to enjoy. I will be on Talk Cosmos. And this one's the old one, and I forgot to put the new one. I thought I put the new one, and I can't remember the date, but it's like the last Sunday of the month in February at 1 o'clock, and you can see it live on my channel. And then again, Simon's website is iconalchemy.com, and my website is thelightpath.com. And I want to thank you again for being here today, and we'll see you again soon. Bye for now.